Hey, Als, it's me, Dr. E. This time here to help you out with Module 3. And this week we really kind of take a critical perspective and start picking apart capitalism, right? As a environmental anthropologist, this is one of my favorite things to do. Um, it's overly simplistic to say that capitalism is the root of all evil in the world. You can't go that far, but it really is important to understand that capitalism is a pervasive ideology, right? It's beyond just an economic system. Um, Sorry, if you hear a lot of birds, I'm actually not in my own office recording this. I'm down in Texas visiting family, and the space that I have, there's a bird nest right outside the window, and they're quite loud. So I apologize for any excessive background noise in this week's recording, but yeah, things happen. Can't control everything. Um, so yeah, capitalism. First and foremost, it's predicated on this idea of supply and demand. That it's driven by consumption. All right, that you have to acquire to consume, and this is this repeating pattern. Look at our daily lives. We go, we work jobs, we earn money, we take that money, and we consume stuff with it. Okay. Um, Now, when you really look at it, demand can never fully be met, right? Because there's always more demand. You can think of it from a bunch of different perspectives. Population is increasing, more people, more demand. You can think of it as new technologies, right? We're constantly trying to find new and better ways to do things, right? Creates more demand. One of my favorites is you watch TV, particularly during prime time, and watch the news. Look at all the drug company ads, right? um, it's all about you need these things, right? You need these things to be better. So I mean, regardless of whatever lens you're looking through, it really drives home this need that you have to keep consuming. All right. Now, a key thing that we really want to note with capitalism is that there's a fundamental relationship between capitalism, consumption, and the environment. All right. This is really easy to see when you look at finite resources like fossil fuels. All right. There's only so much of it. It's not there's not more of it being produced. So if you only have this much and you keep using it, and then it's gone. All right. Simple concept. I'm sure you all understand that. So I'm not going to actually talk about fossil fuels because that one's talked about all the time. I'm going to talk about a different example that maybe none of you will have ever heard of. Y'all probably have one of these things, right? A smartphone of some sort. Okay. I'm a little out of date. This is an iPhone 5S. All right. So, I do consume, but I try not to go buy every new thing that comes out. Sorry, all joking aside. There is a or a semiconducting mineral that is essential to cell phone technology, right? It's called coltan, Coltan. All right. And it's only found in sizable amounts in one geographic location in the entire world, and that would be Central Africa. Okay. Now, because of Western consumption of cell phones, and that's not to say the rest of the world doesn't use cell phones, but let's be really clear. We use these things more than vast majority of people. It's being spread around the world, but for the most part, this is a Western-driven demand. Okay, you could explain that it's expanded through globalization and been adopted by other people in other places. Oh, that's fine, but for the sake of this little discussion, let's just focus on the West. So, coltan, which is essential to making these, all right, is only found in one place, Central Africa. Now, because of Western demand for these products, local communities have literally shifted their entire economic system. All right, the way that they subsist, right? Because that's how an anthropologist understands economics, not money, all right, not finances, but ways of living. Think of it like that: means of subsistence. Okay, so these folks in Central Africa have literally stopped growing crops, right, to feed themselves, right, and to sell for profit, whatever, and are now excavating coltan. Okay? And it is redefined the local economy. Um, and it has devastating environmental consequences. To find this mineral, you gotta strip the forest, right? You got to dig down into the earth, and once you do that, you interrupt and destroy the local ecology, and then you can't even plant a field because you don't have the ecological systems to support it. Okay, so yeah, really clear example of capitalism, right? Consumption and environmental issues. Um, Now, another thing I wanted to talk about is capitalism as an ideology. Right? It is a philosophy. And you can kind of think of it like culture, right? It surrounds everything. It's kind of like the Force in Star Wars, right? And when something is so pervasive, so surrounding, it's really hard to see beyond it or around it, okay? Because it's just in your face. Um, so yeah, we need kind of the first step is recognizing that it's just a philosophy, right? And it is not the only philosophy, right? There are so many other ways to make a living, right? Capitalism is just one of them. Unfortunately, it is so ingrained in our Western logics, right? It's really hard to see past it. Okay, if folks have traveled to other countries and seen other ways, right, you might actually be able to develop an understanding like, oh, hey, here's other ways of doing these things, and they're not relying on this supply and demand and consumption, right? That there's just other ways. Uh, yeah. Let's try to see here. I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah. Let me give you a traditional example. You know, Before colonization in West Africa, um, folks tended to live a very sustainable lifestyle. All right. They grew crops, some to eat, some for textiles, and so they produced food and produced materials that they exchanged with others in a non-capitalistic way. It was more bartering, right? Um, and so everyone had what they needed. There wasn't the idea that you had to have surplus, that you had to have more than your actual need. Right? With colonization, however, this idea of capitalism was introduced, and in fact, many local groups were forced into it. It was part and parcel to the colonial agenda. You had to take these local groups and force them to produce for the colonizer, right? And not only that, you taxed them, right, which forced them into the system, and you often had severe consequences if they didn't participate as well. Um, King Leopold in the Congo Basin is one of the prime examples of this. Rubber production was what it was. Well, rubber extraction was key to it, and it was all about this burgeoning industrial economy on a global scale. But he was extracting a resource to meet Western demands, right? And he exploited local populations to do that. Well, one effect of that was a colonization of the mind of those people. You teach those people that is the way they have to be. And it's not, it's just one, as I've said. And it came to replace lots of traditional lifeways and subsistence systems. So it's really important to keep this idea in mind that capitalism is not some natural thing, right? It was constructed and made viable by people. There's actually today. Um, this is a little this is a bit of an odd example. Um, the school that my kids go to, there's a family that attends this school, and it's very different. They're a communal family. There's actually like three fathers and three wives. They're not co-married. They just live together as an economic unit, right? And they do this in kind of it is a way to move away from capitalistic practices. They work as a group, not as an individual that needs to consume. Okay. So yeah, for myself, one of the things that I really invest in is this social movement called farm to table. Rather than using my money to participate in an industrialized food production system, which I see has lots of pitfalls and problems. I like to know my food, right? I like to know the farmer, right, that raised that chicken, that raised that cow that I get my milk from, right, or that I make chicken nuggets from. Uh, yeah, and there's all this you could argue about cutting out the middleman and stuff like that, but what it really comes down to is recognizing that capitalism is not just the way it has to be. I've bartered goods and services with other people, and rather than for money, all right, rather than reinforcing this constant consumption, right? So I really want to stress. I should have started with this, but I'll make note of it now. Karl Marx, right? We actually have to give a lot of credit to it, and don't jump off, get on the whole, communist bandwagon or anything like that, because all that Marx did was he was actually a historian, and he identified patterns, right, through history. Um, and granted that they were used for political agendas and stuff like that, but at its root, it was really a recognition that you tend to have groups that control the means of production, and then you have other groups that are subject to the means of production, right? And all of that production, right, it fuels consumption, which supports the supply and demand, and yada yada. So yeah, these are just kind of some critical thoughts to help you explore our concepts this week in our readings about capitalism. I'm going to be putting together some other videos about this week's assignments to help you out with those as well. So make sure to check those out. See you in the discussion boards. Take care.